Okay, so let's change gears. Okay, let's talk some specifics. Let's talk fungi. Okay, fungi. These are going to be, a lot of times people think fungi, they think mushrooms and things like that. But they're also, when you go to the cafeteria on campus and you see the bread and it's got those little blue spots, fungus. Now, those little blue spots is actually, if you get a magnifying glass and you look, it's actually a woven mat of things. We'll talk about that in a minute. Now, we're not going to talk about a lot of the fungi because, well, they're just not medically important. The majority of them are they're decomposers. A tree falls in the forest, well, you're going to have mushrooms and different fungi and mold. They're going to decompose it, break it down. Those fungi, those molds, those things like that are out there, well, they really have nothing to do with us. They can't infect us. You can't get a mushroom growing in you or on you. So the majority of them we're not going to discuss for this course. If you really want to know about them, take the majors microbiology or find one of the local universities that's teaching mycology and get it there. What we're going to focus on are the yeast and the molds, aspergillus, things like that can actually infect us or grow on us. Okay. Now, keep in mind, we're going to see that when we're talking of fungi, they're going to come in two forms: yeast, single cell or unicellular organisms, or they're going to be in hyphae. Remember that blue spot that I told you looks like a woven mat of? As we're going to see in the next slide, that's what hyphae are. Now, not all fungi are bad. As you sit there right now watching this video, you've got fungi growing on you, probably in your gastrointestinal tract, some yeast-like things growing in your mouth, your genital area, your armpits, anywhere it's moist and they can grow. There are some that are going to be bad for us, some that aren't. If you have some of the bad fungi growing on you, in you, they call this a mycosis. You have a mycotic infection, a fungal infection. Now, when you look at most fungi, the ones that we're going to focus on, like I said, it's going to be a blue or a black spot on the bread, or a piece of fruit that got left out, and you didn't notice it for a week or so, and it's set on the counter. Now it's fuzzy. If you get a magnifying glass, you look at that up close, you're going to see that fuzziness is actually a bunch of, like I said, woven strands, as you see here or here. I can't remember which way it's supposed to point. These woven strands, those individual strands, are hyphae. Hyphae come in two forms: septated, non-septated. If it's a septated hyphae, it's only certain species. Non-septated, other species. What that means is they have walls, breaks. So the non-septated is one continuous cell, one long strand, and it just has a nucleus every so many micrometers. Whereas the septated, it's split up. Each different portion has its own nucleus, its own mini metabolism. Most of the medically important fungi are going to be in a yeast-like single cell organisms. Has all the stuff we talked about in the last couple of lectures, all the organelles, all the abilities and stuff, but it's every cell for itself. You see in the picture here that it's individual cells. They're not sharing, they're not cooperating, they're just every cell for itself. Now, when it comes time to make the new cells, the next generation, it's a bastardized version of mitosis. Instead of the equal division that you've learned about in previous biology courses, you see here what's referred to as budding. A small mini-me cell is made, protruded off, breaks off, and will grow, get bigger, and then start its own budding, and so on and so forth. Now, when we look at, and you look at this table, and you look at all the different fungal infections we find, this isn't all of them, this is just a sampling. You know, community acquired, person to person. You're out and about, shaking hands, sharing clothes, things like that. You're breathing in histoplasmosis. You breathe in dust. On those dust are going to be fungal spores. They like your lungs. They grow in your lungs. Next thing you know, you have a respiratory infection. Or maybe you're in hospital-associated infections. Yep, still to this day, being in the hospital is a dangerous place. You pick up all sorts of things. Or opportunistic infections. You get fungal infections of your feet, your groin, jock itch, you know, things like that. That's where certain types of fungi are now growing within the epidermis. They're living on the keratin of your dead cells. Now, when it comes to funguses, they are heterotrophic. They are not photosynthetic. They need to take up their organic molecules, what they're going to live off of. They have to take it up from their environment. They come in two forms, saprobes and parasites. These are the ones that we're going to focus on for this course. Saprobes, those are the ones I talked about. The tree falls, tree gets, you know, broken down. That's the mushrooms, the molds. They live off of the dead, decaying stuff. Parasites, well, these are the fungi that infect us, infect animals, infect plants, whatever. When you're looking at them, we differentiate mostly old school. We go by morphology. What colors, what shapes, how do they look? We look at the spots on the bread or the fuzziness on that piece of fruit. All of those hyphae growing together in a mat. We call that a mycelium. What's the color of the mycelium? Penicillium, which you heard of, that's where we got our penicillin. That's bluish. There are other ones that are going to be black, and there's going to be colors in between. We also look under microscope. Are they septated, non-septated? Certain species are going to have, you know, one or the other. That's how it goes. We know that some fungi can change shapes depending upon their life cycle, depending on their environment. Shapes of their hyphae can be the vegetative. Means that this is where the metabolism is happening. This is where nutrients are being absorbed, things broken down, things being built. Other hyphae are going to get the signal, and they're going to be there for reproduction, making the next generation, spreading the species all around. And those reproductive hyphae are going to make what are referred to as spores. Spores. It's going to be a single cell that's now encased in a protective coating that can be spread out. Gust of wind, droplet of water.